Philodendron Burle-marxii, commonly known as Burle-marx, is possibly the easiest of all philodendron varieties to grow, and one that makes a great choice of plant whether grown indoors or out. It is a naturally occurring species that can be found growing as a climber in the warm and moist jungles of South America. But despite its wild origins, it's a very adaptable plant that can be easily accommodated even in relatively cold and dry houses. This species is actually a climber but with a vigorous branching habit, so these plants form a dense clump. The leaves are produced in abundance and they are quite attractive. Mature plants can produce leaves up to 60 centimeters in length, but on plants grown indoors, a 20 to 30 centimeter leaf length can be expected. The leaves have a mid-green coloration with a paler midrib and are glossy on the upper surface and undersides. If grown outdoors in full sun, the leaves will have a paler coloration and will be thicker. If grown indoors or in partial shade outdoors, the leaves will be a darker shade of green, as can be seen with this leaf. This plant produces many thickened aerial roots with which it climbs and scrambles, and large established plants, such as this example, will have a thick mass of roots. The roots can be regularly trimmed back if required without harming the plant. These plants prefer to grow upwards if possible, and they do well when provided with supports to climb, such as moss poles, stakes, or branches. The roots will adhere to the supports themselves. Now let's have a look at a more typical potted example of Burle-marxii. This plant has thinner, slightly more delicate leaves of a darker color, which is normal for plants grown indoors. The leaves naturally have a glossy appearance. The abundant growth and branching habit can be seen even on relatively small plants. This plant has been grown from a top cutting, so has some older, larger leaves and a great many younger, smaller leaves that have formed since the cutting was taken from the mother plant. Philodendron Burle-marxii is very fast growing, and plants such as these will quickly form dense, rounded shapes. This plant is growing in a loose potting mixture of cocoa peat with added coconut chunks, perlite, and a little garden soil. Burle-marxii is not fussy about its compost as long as an open mix is provided. Pot indoor plants into large pots to allow for the quick growth, and you may need to place some broken brick into the bottom of the pot to give the pot added weight. The growth is almost always top heavy, so a weighted pot is needed to prevent toppling. Philodendron Burle-marxii should be watered regularly in the growing season so that the compost is kept slightly moist at all times. Tap water can be used as this species is not sensitive about its water. It is also quite forgiving if you forget to water it, as it does have a good degree of drought tolerance, and even badly dehydrated plants quickly recover if placed in a bucket of water for 30 minutes. These plants can take low light levels but aim to position in medium to bright light indoors. Fertilizer can be given from time to time, but on a plant as vigorous as this, fertilizer is not crucial but will be beneficial for overall plant health. A general purpose liquid fertilizer applied once a month is ideal. This species doesn't have any particular problems with pests, but do watch out for common pests such as aphids and red spider mites if you grow in a drier indoor environment. For repotting, aim to repot every year. This will give the plant a boost from the fresh compost, and the increased root space will be needed as these plants increase in size quite considerably each year. If plants do become overcrowded or misshapen, then simply prune them back to a more suitable or manageable shape. Propagation of these plants from cuttings is extremely easy. Normally, I would allow a plant of this size to grow larger before cutting, but for demonstration purposes, I will take a cutting now. Look for firm-stemmed growth with several leaves and new shoots. We can make a cut with a knife or garden scissors. Here is the cutting that has been taken from the plant. It has several leaves which are fully developed and of good size, as well as several new growing points and some nice developing roots. Since this cutting already has some good roots and healthy leaves, it can be potted up immediately, and rooting in water or adding rooting agents such as rooting powder or liquid is not required. This cutting has been potted in a simple mix of coir compost with some coconut chunks and perlite, but any general purpose compost that is free draining will work well, especially with added horticultural grit or perlite. When potted, the cutting should sit firmly in the pot, but avoid firming the cutting too much or planting it too deeply. If it doesn't sit firmly, then tie it to a stick for support. The support can be removed in a few months when a full root ball has developed. So this cutting can now be watered well and placed in a shady spot while it establishes. Keep it moist at all times so that it doesn't dry out at this early stage. In 6 to 8 weeks, it should have grown sufficient roots to be grown on as normal.